Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Safely to the Moon, the last episode of season 1. Thank you, everybody, for joining us along in this journey and listening to our stories. It's been a fun time. We've a lot more. Today, Kark and I are going to keep talking to Uncle Dave, and where we left off was we were talking about what happened with the failed launch and how SafeMoon lost 3 employees in a span of a few days. Dave, how did everybody get to Utah? How did we get the office space, and how did that move happen?
Well, we had been looking at spaces in Utah. I'd mentioned, or in London. I mentioned before. I had to come back to Utah for some business, and just on a whim, I started looking at office space. And we looked at a bunch of places, and it seemed like it was going to be easier for us to get a lease in Utah, since we'd butted up against so many roadblocks in London. One of the spaces I looked at, Brandon Fugel met us there, and so I kind of briefed him on SafeMoon. It was an office that was better for me because it was closer to my house than Pleasant Grove, but that's not the one Braden picked. So he picked the one that was close to the house that he had put an offer in and was closing on. We were able to negotiate a lease, a 7-year lease for that space.
7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
What were the terms of that lease?
Well, we had to pay 2 years up front, which was, I think, around $500,000.
Jeez.
And then, there was a question. I had left after I left the company. I don't know if they actually started collecting rent. Because there was a question whether or not the deposit, the 2 years, was going to cover the first 2 years or the last 2 years of the lease.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But at the time, that was kind of standard, the 7 years. That was popping up at a bunch of places that we'd looked at, especially when they're doing a build, because that was a co-working space where we ripped out a ton of offices. Like the offices you guys ended up in, those were doubles. So they ripped out the center wall and made 2 offices into one. So I think that's kind of why the 7 years came in.
It was huge, too. I mean, Hayden and I have talked about it on this podcast before, but it was a big space, and it was just us.
Yeah, well, they told me there was going to be 30 devs in there. Oh. And, they're giving me specs, and I'm the one who went through the designs to make it, make it a functioning office for more of a bullpen for these devs, and then I had to get my studio space, and, Braden had to have the big corner office, and, so we finalized the lease on September 15th, and we weren't going to be able to move in until the 1st of January. So there was a long process, picking the paint colors and the floor colors. He wanted the LVP on the floor, all that stuff. It was a long process.
Yeah, there was a lot of emptiness because they're in the middle of the construction process when I came and visited. And John's office especially kind of struck me just because of how huge it was. I mean, you could put a basketball court in there. It was just, that's an exaggeration, but it was massive. And I'm like, okay, someone looked at the floor plans and says, I want this office. But then when they actually got in there and there's no furniture and there's nothing, it just was like his little desk in the corner.
Yeah.
And then just all this open space. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. The other offices were going to be doubled up. There would have been, 3 people working in each space, a marketing division, if we'd ever hired one. Comms, if we'd ever hired them. There was a lot of spaces that would have been filled up, but with people, but they never hired them. So let's see. He closes on his house in September 23rd, and that's when I think we signed the lease around the same time, after the terms had been all agreed to. The wallet launched on the 6th of October. So we're finally on the upswing, right? We finally came through with one of our projects. then since we were in Utah and Silicon Slopes came up, and I'd gone to it for several years, so I asked him, do you want to go? And yeah, he was all excited about it. So I bought a bunch of tickets for us, and that's where we met this really tall dude who, I got to say, looked pretty skeptical.
I definitely was.
When he approached us.
Yeah, I remember. So, because I love the Silicon Slopes conference. For those that don't know, it's just the big Utah Tech, and it's awesome. But
Yeah,
I remember I was sitting in one of the I think it was the keynote, and I was on Instagram. It was like before it was starting, and John had posted a picture on Instagram that he was there. And I turned to my buddy. I'm like, dude, John from SafeMoon is here. Like, we need to go talk to him. Like, I have so many questions for this guy, because SafeMoon never answered questions. And so I was part fan, part skeptic, but I eventually ran into him. And yeah, so I was trying to come off as I don't think I came off as aggressive. I don't know, maybe you can tell me, Dave, but I had a bunch of questions. He answered them. You guys were super nice. I had a great experience meeting and talking to you guys.
Yeah, we'd just eaten lunch, I think. We were in the main hall, heading towards one of the NFT keynote or something, and or maybe it was the Dow. But anyway, we were heading one of those things, and yeah, I see you stop, and the irony was when this is the same time when Hayden comes into play too, because we go and we get there for the keynote, and it was Ryan Smith and Dwayne Wade, and they were talking, and I'm like, I want to hear this, and Braden said, I'm bigger than that guy. And I'm like, jeez, what? Ryan Smith is a billionaire, Qualtrics, owner of the Jazz, Dwayne Wade, you don't know sports ball, and I was just flabbergasted, like, I'm bigger than that guy. So that's when he took off and left and went to go meet with Hayden, which once again, like, if we're all part of a company, why wouldn't you take me with you? And apparently, from what I've heard from your previous episode, that's when he went and said, I'm just going to buy the grounded company.
Yeah, he wanted to buy the company that Hayden was working for.
Yeah. So, well, I guess, since you can't buy the 14 million British pound estate, you have some money to play with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So yeah, that's when we met you. And it was funny because it wasn't even until when you started that Braden's younger brother said, that's the guy from Silicon Slopes.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, whoa. Anyway, so Silicon Slopes, yeah, he said, he came back and said, I met with some marketing guys. They're going to give you a pitch. The pitch didn't go that great for the amount of money that was quoted. And then he hired Hayden just away from that company. So Malta was on the agenda, on the horizon coming up. And we had been in discussion with them because at the same time, there was Founders Forum going on in New York. And Braden really wanted to go to that. That was a Richard Branson thing. And he found out that cameras were not going to be allowed. And he had previously approached me and said, I want to start my own YouTube channel, so we need to figure that out. And I was like, why? Because you're kind of, going against your own brand. What are you trying to delude the community? Or it didn't make any sense. And I think it was the Scott Paul effect. He saw his YouTube channel, and he wanted to do the same sort of thing.
So John wanted to branch out into his own YouTube brand. I mean, was that
something like that? I mean, I didn't know what, it's like, well, what do you want to do? I mean, he didn't have any answer. He just said, I want to do my own YouTube channel.
Interesting.
Maybe his jocularity. I don't know. So we were discussing the Malta trip, and when he found out you couldn't have cameras at Founders Forum, then suddenly he decided he'd rather go to Malta.
That's crazy. So he passed up meeting with Richard Branson and those guys just because
Yeah.
I couldn't get a picture of it.
Yeah. The, Illuminati of corporate America or corporate world. And he's passing on that because he wouldn't be able to get photographed with them.
Gosh.
So Malta became the next best thing, I guess. So he was kind of waffling on whether we were going. And then I had a discussion with him and said, look, I need to go to Malta because I'm supposed to come through with a podcast for you. And I don't know anybody. We actually had the PR company in London was giving us names of really famous people that we're going to host. And KSI was one. I'd never heard of him. I didn't even know who the guy was. But there were some big names that they were going to end up paying a lot of money for them to host this podcast. And then Braden just said to me, why don't you just host it? And I'm like, okay. Well, if I'm hosting it, I need guests. And we can't have Scott Paul on every week. So we should probably, make some contacts outside of safemoon. So Malta was the trip.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when he said, okay, fine, you can go. The next day, we get told that Josh is coming. Oh, Wormtongue is coming on board. He had originally been pitched by his mother as someone who could help us get the wind turbines into the Gambia because he seemed to have a specialty in logistics in Australia. I don't know. He's the king of moving sausage around Australia or something.
Yeah, that whole story never checked out, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and we did a camera test because we were following him around with a camera at the Silicon Slopes. I don't know if you know that, but we had done a camera test where he'd gone on this major rant about Ben, about Jack, about everybody was horrible except for him. And that he was bringing in a guy who he called a heavy hitter. Our new COO is a heavy hitter. And I didn't know the guy from Adam. I didn't know anything about him. I'd met his son, and because he got trapped here during COVID, couldn't go back to Australia. And anyway, so I have this intro call with him. And he tells me that Braden has offered him this ridiculous bonus if he can cut costs.
I remember that.
And so I'm trying to tell him, well, this is probably areas that you can do it in. I didn't have any clue what was coming.
Do you know how much?
It was over 6 figures.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll tell you how we found that out later.
And that was just the bonus. His salary was pretty good from what I heard.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that either, but I just know that he straight up told me, I'm going to get this huge bonus if I can cut costs.
Okay.
That was like the extent of our conversation. Mm-hmm. Then I started hearing from the team in London about the crap he was pulling on them. They were making memes and sending them about how horrible this guy was.
No way, I didn't know that.
And we were literally just having these, I don't think he'd even started in on me yet. But they were sending memes like, who are the people that do work and who are the people that comment? And Josh was the guy or Wormtongue was the guy who comments.
So horrible in what ways?
Just requesting things that never got brought up again. I mean, he did it with me. He was like, I need your 60 or 30, 60, 90-day plan, which I gave to him. And then it never came up again other than to say that he never got it.
It was my perception that because he was clearly didn't know what he was doing. He's never had that role before. So to me, it looked like he was just kind of faking it till you make it. So he was just asking for things, delegating things, like making rules, and so he rubbed everybody the wrong way. And
those of us that had been fighting and, trying to follow Braden's lack of leadership, to make the company keep running. And so I think it was Charles who said, well, call Kate because Kate can really help you with him.
I wonder why.
I'm like, okay, so I have this conversation, and she's telling me,
And Kate, for those listening, was the global head of HR.
yeah, in Australia, where we had no employees in Australia, and she had no knowledge of U.S. law. But when she found out that Utah, you could be fired for no reason, she really got a kick out of that. She made specific to tell me how interesting and cool it was that, you know, you wouldn't be on a 6-month severance from whatever company once you got fired.
Hooray.
Yeah. So I didn't know at the time, though, their relationship. That was told to me later by Jen.
I'm sorry, what relationship?
They were together.
Oh, okay.
The COO and the global head of HR were in a relationship.
Yeah.
But if you brought it up, you were threatened you'd be fired.
Right.
Okay.
and gaslit.
Literally, I think Jen had FaceTimed him, and she was in the background making their breakfast when he was still in Australia. So that's, you know, kind of seals the deal.
Okay.
So yeah, she was no help. She was telling me, well, this is a startup, and this is how startups work. And I'm like, lady, I've been working in startups for 30 years. Every film is a startup. You start with a piece of paper, you know, a script, and that's what you start with. So you don't need to explain to me how to set up a company, how to get office space, how to do all this stuff. I've been doing it for a long time. Funny how she kept saying, like, she was doing the top down survey, analyzing all the employees in the company. That never got done. The employee handbook never got done. I think the only thing they did was the travel policy that said Braden could fly first class and everybody else had to fly coach.
I remember that.
Hey, that's hard work.
Yeah.
Company
Yeah,
policies,
it was.
okay.
She was just banging it out.
Yeah.
No double entendre there.
So how? Just real quick, you mentioned global head of HR.
Yeah.
In your experience, in your perspective, how many employees did you see at SafeMoon between just like employees, contractors, moderators? How would you kind of break that out in terms of numbers from what you saw?
Well, I mean, I would never have counted the moderators as employees because I think they were 1099'd. And, you know, in my book, you can't claim that as an employee unless they're W-2'd. So I know there were 3 in London. I think Charles was one of them.
Okay.
And then there was me. There was a guy in Texas.
Do you know what he did?
He had been doing the HR stuff before Kate got hired.
Was he replaced by Kate or?
No, I think he stayed I mean, he was there until I left.
Okay.
Begins with a D, Jonas. You know,
okay, yeah.
Was he there till you were?
Yeah, but he switched over to do something else.
Oh, okay. I don't want to name people.
That's fine.
You know,
Fine.
yeah. Let's see. There was probably, I think at one time I downloaded before I was officially booted off the company access. There was like 9 people listed total.
And keep in mind, John always claimed 100 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard different numbers: 60, 100 plus,
90.
It always
90.
went up.
90 was the big one.
It always went up. Yeah, I always heard
Yeah.
between 60 and 90.
Right.
So that's why I asked: is where are these numbers coming from? Because that implies like a huge organization, and that was a huge HQ that was being built with a ton of office space.
Yeah, and I was the one that had to go find the furniture because his girlfriend refused to do it when I was told she was going to be handling it. So I went and found all the desks, and, you know, we only moved in a portion because we were waiting for the devs to come, and they never came. So
The devs.
the devs, yeah. Oh, yeah, there was even one conversation where they said, I don't think we're not going to let you build the studio because we're going to use it for devs.
Wow.
And we didn't even have one dev in the whole building yet.
So when Ryan came in and took over the project, took over the code base, do you know where his developers were based out of, or their contractors? You know how big that team is?
They were in Thailand or Vietnam, as far as I could tell.
That was my understanding. It was a mix of Thailand and Vietnam. And
Yeah.
there was a handful. I don't know a number.
Yeah, because they were always coming and going. Like, there'd be somebody, and then it'd say so-and-so just joined Slack. and then nobody, that person left Slack. And so you can never really keep a handle on. And I don't know if they were W-2'd because they're in another country. So
I don't think so.
probably 1099 or paid as independent contractors, which once again, you can't claim as employees. So that was my big issue, was like, you keep saying this and they're not employees.
Was there a different group of people working on the exchange, or?
Oh, that was what was the company?
Was it Shift?
Yeah, Shift Markets.
Yeah, so that was outsourced. Everything was outsourced pretty much.
Yeah, basically the Friday before I got fired on Monday, they had just locked in like the statement of work for them to start building the exchange.
And when was this, like, time-wise?
This was Valentine's Day 2022.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, the wind turbines. So,
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that was another big marketing thing for SafeMoon, was that, and some of the details were lost on me, but it was my understanding that we were going to put wind turbines in the Gambia that had nanotechnology on them, which made them more efficient. And these wind turbines would also be NFTs that would burn SafeMoon.
mm-hmm.
Every turn to burn.
Yes,
I remember that.
I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
They were also going to be a mesh network, if I remember correctly, that would provide internet access to them as well.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Really cool vision if it would work. So what happened there?
So the turbines arrive, and he's like, "Well, I want to shoot a video of me assembling one." And so I'm like, "Well, let's talk this out. How do we want to shoot it? How do you want to see it?" And he's like, "Well, I don't have time for that. I'm just telling you, I want to shoot a video." So I get a call the next day. "Come down. I'm ready to shoot." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have any. There's nothing here. What are we doing? Just come down." So I drive down to his house, mansion, and we set up in the big detached garage. And he starts putting it together and realizes he doesn't have a base to put it on because he never ordered the bases for it. He put it together wrong. So the turbines were crooked.
What did he order? I mean, was this something that was bespoke, custom created for SafeMoon?
Oh, no. These are off-the-shelf wind turbines. So
I shouldn't laugh.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I tried to get ideas of what he wanted to do, and so I just said, okay, we'll just do time lapse then, because it's, that way I can cut out what you put together wrong. And after we were done shooting it, he goes, "Oh, by the way, I need you to take all the logos. There's a logo on every one of the blades. Take the logos off." And I'm like, "Well, people have already discovered where you're getting these from. I don't know what the big deal is." "I don't care. Take them off." So if we had done some pre-planning, I could have Greeked them out. That's the term we use in the film industry, where you cover logos. You'll see people, cover logos you don't want to show. We could have done that before we filmed it. But no. So now I don't know how many hours it took to go through every frame, blocking the logo for Semtiv. So that was a good time. Anyway, during that process, that's when we confirmed that Charles and I would be going to Malta. So we bought our tickets. I bought my ticket non-refundable. I don't know why. I think it was a pretty big savings, and since we had the travel policy, I'm there to save the company money. And I think we're prepping for the Malta trip, and I was asking, that's when Braden said he was going for sure. I said, "Do you want a microphone so you can interview people on the floor of the convention?" And he said, "Yeah, call Josh for approval." And I'm like, "It's $15. And he said, "Yeah, call Josh. I'm handing all that over to Josh now. You don't talk to me about money anymore." I just thought it was crazy, so I just went and bought it. I just went and bought it myself. I'm like, I'm not going to talk to this guy. He's a dick. Sorry, worm tongue. And then so we jumped in and quickly ordered some swag to give away, safemoon gear locally. And 2 days later, Braden cancels my trip. And I'm like, well, why? And he says, I'm taking a cameraman. And I'm like, for your YouTube channel? And he didn't really answer that, but he didn't need to because he's the CEO. So the next day after that, I see Scott Paul tweeting that he's going to Malta. And he's accompanying Braden. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're preventing us from coming up with guests for our podcast so you can take a guy to make YouTube videos in Malta. And then he says to me, you guys are going to Miami. So he sent me and Charles to Miami because Thomas was going, and he wanted us to make sure Thomas doesn't say anything because he was still on, rooftop. They call them rooftop devs, the ones that just get paid to come to work and don't get. If you ever watch Silicon Valley on HBO, Thomas had become a rooftop dev by then. So that goes well. We got death threats. We had 2 Army Rangers as security for us there. It was a good time.
Wow.
So I booked my own hotel, so I was off property, but this person claimed they knew where Charles was. And so the security guys moved him to a completely different floor. We ended up flying back to London because I had planned to take my vacation after Malta. So I had purchased on my own tickets to fly from Malta to Germany where I was going on my vacation. So we fly to London after Miami, and they had rented a flat by then, and it was a 3-bedroom flat, and Charles was the only one there. And so he said, well, just crash out here until your flight the next day, or 2 days. It was 2 days later. Crash out here, and then, you can fly to Malta to catch your flight to Germany. And Braden finds out I'm in London and sends me a text that says, you're not here on business. You need to be out of the flat by 9 o'clock in the morning.
What?
Yeah. That was the day his family said, screw you. You're done.
Oh, so this was his attempt at some form of retaliation.
We don't know. I don't know why he booted me out. I think it might have been back coming from Wormtongue, because he was pissed that we're still going to Malta. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I honestly, none of it made any sense, and his entire siblings and parents were just beside themselves. They're like, I can't believe he just did that to you. So I went and rented a hotel like a block away, crashed there overnight, went back to the flat the next day to catch my ride to the airport. It was literally just so, petty.
Yeah.
So
Well, he got you good.
Yeah, he got me. Oh, had to stay at the W Hotel. Boy, that was horrible. So I'm flying to my vacation, and Josh is demanding that I make videos for Wormtongue, sorry.
You're good.
Demanding that I'm making videos explaining what gas is because Kate doesn't know how to do it and doesn't know what it is.
Let me just interject something right there. John hired a bunch of people that had no idea anything about crypto to help him run this crypto company. So that doesn't surprise me that they were asking you to make instruction videos.
Well, and they were playing it off like I was going to share this with the community. I'm like, what? They already know what gas is. They're in. They've bought. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're asking me to do this on my vacation is just like, what are you doing? That goes back to, the realization that Hayden made about he was just there to antagonize people, come up with reasons to get us out of the company. Mm-hmm.
So you suspect that that Josh was just leading you on little errands to just basically piss you off to chase you out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question that I don't have the answer to is, was he directed to do that by Braden, or was he just allowed to run free and do it on his own so he could collect his massive bonus?
Okay.
I tend to think it's the latter, especially because I noticed that John really got off on delegating stuff to where he's like, oh, that's not, he's like, oh, talk to Josh, or oh, talk to so-and-so, talk to so-and-so. Like he delegated himself out of his role as CEO. He didn't have to do anything. And so I think he would just turn a blind eye.
It's Halo time.
That's a real quote.
Well, that does lead to an interesting question. How involved did you see John from the beginning to where you, like, near the end of your tenure at SafeMoon? Did you see like a difference in how involved he was, or did he delegate himself out of a job essentially?
Well, when he was in Utah, he was, like still acting in command. He would not even open the door for me in the office. Every time I wanted to have a meeting to discuss something. I think it was the launch of the swap, when they mentioned the partners that were going to be paying, what it was, at $200,000 to buy in. And, he said, go talk to Hayden about this thing. And so I go to talk to Hayden. Hayden's like, well, they get this and this and this, and then they get a 15-minute interview with an AMA with Braden. And I'm like, okay. And then at the last second, I think, who was it? What's that guy's name?
Ace,
yeah,
Ace Boogie,
the rapper dude. And at the last second, Braden says, I'm not doing it. Hayden's going to do it. And I didn't even know if Hayden ever had interviewed anybody before. Like, I mean, it was just, these are the kind of arbitrary decisions that were just made where there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not what you told us we were doing. And you're changing it at literally the last minute. Like, we were going in to mic up Braden, and he's like, I'm not doing it. Hayden's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It was.
He would make weird decisions like that all the time and without an explanation. Like, even I was told some ground rules when I started because I was selling these marketing packages and listings. And I was told, you can't sell to anyone that has their contract renounced. And for those of you that aren't into crypto, it basically, if the contract is renounced, basically means that no one holds ownership. Is that a good way of putting it? And I was like, why? And they're like, oh, that's just the rule.
Well, it's very arbitrary too, because you can renounce a contract and you might still own the liquidity pool tokens. So it doesn't make any sense. Or you could have ownership over a token, but you have no only owner functions on the contract, or only ones that don't do anything. So that's very arbitrary, saying no renounce contracts. In fact, you should probably do the opposite. You should probably say, hey, only contracts that are renounced, because that's a centralization concern. You have more risk when you have tokens that have not renounced their contracts.
Yeah. And
that's weird.
Yeah. A lot of things like that. Like, I have 100 examples. So.
Yeah. Most of it never made any sense in any way, shape, or form. So now it's time to talk about Operation Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
What is Operation Phoenix?
When you find out, tell me.
Dang it. Which was, we found out, and I think I mentioned this on the last episode, but John spelled Phoenix wrong, played it off like it was on purpose.
It wasn't.
It was not.
Yeah.
He just didn't spell Phoenix right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what was that?
Well, so the way that it was explained to me was his mom's company was coming up with a script, and they would be providing it to us. And then he would be, relaying it to the community. So through all this time, I knew they had a company. I knew they were doing things. Excuse me. But it had never been explained to me. So I get sent to go to the lab to get some B-roll footage
And this is the lab that John's mom owned?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm sent to get B-roll footage of what they're doing, the tests they're running, and all that stuff. So I go up there and I do that. And I asked them, I go, so, are you guys getting hassled by Josh too? And they're like, why would we be getting hassled? And I'm like, well, because you're part of SafeMoon, right? You're Dark Moon. They're like, no, we're not part of SafeMoon. I'm like, what? We are our own entity. We have nothing to do with SafeMoon. This was a personal investment. So everything that we had been discussing up to that point regarding the Gambia, regarding all this stuff, was never under SafeMoon.
Crazy.
It was all under the other company that SafeMoon had no attachment to.
That was not sold that way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying. So I'm literally on December 18th figuring this all out. And we're supposed to air this on the December 31st. So it turns out that because he had been doing nothing and nobody had been working on anything, basically he went and said, is there something that I can use to sell and say that this is Operation Phoenix? And that's where they came up with the nanoparticles on the wind turbines.
So specifically you're saying that up until this point, there was nothing done for specifically Operation Phoenix. Obviously, there was still work being done on the wallet and the exchange, but up until this point, nothing on Operation Phoenix.
Right.
Well,
Other than
there
we did
tweets.
There's some tweets, and we did the times the assembly of the wind turbine.
Okay.
Wrong. Yeah. So he was given the script, and I think we couldn't even shoot until this 27th of December, and this is supposed to air on the 31st. Let's keep that in mind. So we're there, and this is when you may have seen the videos of him freaking out, and it was because the construction guys were still working in the office. Like, I said, why don't we just shoot it at your house in front of the fireplace? Why don't we just do it in a quiet place? And he's like, no, we're going to do it at the office. So we do it there. Didn't work the first day, so we went back the next day. I think it was a Sunday. And finally get through it. But he wouldn't rehearse on anything. And he was supposed to learn the script, and instead he had written it in his little notebook. And he was reading it off his notebook. And I'm like, this is bad. So we downloaded a last-minute app that worked as a teleprompter on an iPad. And that's what he was reading off of. And that's what everybody was freaking out about. But it would have been worse if we'd done it the way that he was doing it. It's like he couldn't even take a couple hours and memorize this script. He just had no effort. Mm-hmm. So that goes out. That's, I don't remember what the sentiment was, if that was really popular.
It was not. I distinctly remember because I had either just started or was in the interview process or something. And so I was very invested. And I remember I had friends texting me, being like, what the heck is this?
Right.
Well, it didn't answer any questions from my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. I still don't know what Operation Phoenix is. We've had all these things kind of dripping about what it could be or what it is. And everyone close that I talked to had no clue. They're like, I don't know. It's just something that he just talks about and hypes up. Like, this is Operation Phoenix. It's Operation Phoenix. It's a secret, but we're going to tell you more. We're going to reveal it. And then even when it was quote unquote revealed, there's more questions than answers at that point.
Yep.
Right. Because that never, in all the discussions we had ever had, that was not part of it. So it was like, what? This is all new. So that goes. We did the first live AMA with Ryan from the office. That's when they were saying, oh, you guys got to see the studio. And it was a mess. We hadn't even started building it. I actually had, a Hollywood production designer designing this. It was going to look just like the captain's ready room in Star Trek.
I remember you showed me the mock-ups. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was going to be cool. We would have had 3 sets. In an interview, like a couch, had a space-age looking couch, a news desk. We'd been talking with a certain person to do a daily crypto minute, and then an announcement area. Had a full-on sliding door like in Star Trek. Anyway, we spent a lot of time on that, and I literally had the construction guys driving to Home Depot to start buying the wood, and I told Josh, I'm like, I need the money, and he said, no, you're not building it. After months and months, and I just freaked out on him. I started yelling at him. Well, that was one of the main reasons they claimed for me getting fired. And I think you and Hayden were in there. They made it sound like you guys complained.
We definitely didn't.
Yeah, I know that now. But they made it sound like you were the ones complaining, and that's why they had to take action.
No, it was my first few months at SafeMoon, because you and I only overlapped for 2 months, and it was all so much, and a lot was very weird. But the moments of clarity would be when you would come into our office and you would tell us stuff, because I would ask Hayden questions, and Hayden's like, I don't really know, and John wasn't really there a whole lot, and Josh was still in Australia doing what we didn't really like him, so we didn't really talk to him, and there was no one else in the office. And then sometimes you'd come in and be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're never going to the Gambia. And I'm like, okay, that sucks. That makes a lot of sense why this has happened. But yeah, so no, we wouldn't complain about you because you were our source of information on what was happening at the company we worked for.
Yeah, that's the other reason I was fired. Thanks a lot. On November 7th, when the whole Malta thing was happening, and I even made a tweet about this, Charles and I had a call with Josh to explain, why we needed to go to Malta. And that's when he claimed, and this is funny because Braden's mom was sitting off camera. He didn't know she was in the room. And that's when he made the comment about, it's Braden's company. If he wants to drive it off a cliff, I'm here to push the gas. And we were so shocked by that, and Jen was so pissed. Like, after we got off the call, she's like, SafeMoon is never going into the Gambia as long as that guy's still working there. And I think she relayed that to him, to Braden, and that's probably the reason why they soured so fast, because he'd made his decision. And the funny thing is, like, he was pulling so much crap, and Ibs got sick, and they had something for him that would help him with what he was sick with, and they went to give it to him, and Josh was there, and they just basically told him to F off. And then he wrote this long post to Brad on LinkedIn. I don't know what I did. I don't know why there's this contention between us, And it's like, dude, get some self-awareness.
Yeah.
Anyway, in my opinion, the hiring of that guy is what really started it, on the path of where it is now.
Yeah.
Because we all know Braden was easily manipulated by people, especially if he thought they knew business, and a lot of people were faking it. And it's just sad, sad to see where it all ended up.
Yeah, no, it really was. What was your perspective like? So you left not too long after that, and then what was it like watching SafeMoon from a different perspective? Because it was still crumbling.
Well, yeah, since I had been, I rolled right into Jen's company because we kind of knew what was going on. We knew what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. I had lawyers already set up, to negotiate my exit. It wasn't a shock, when they finally fired me, but watching what he was saying on Twitter and in Discord, and then knowing what the conversations were with, ECG and his relationship with the Gambia. And, you know, it was like, I left on February 14th. The birthday month was coming up on March 1st. Well, it wasn't even going to be a birthday month, because it's like, you know, what do you do when you forgot someone's birthday? You say, let's party for a month and we'll make up for it. So, you know, if you're going to do a big thing for the birthday, you would have planned that in December. You would have been working on that from, I mean, I don't know how many months we worked on the Piccadilly Circus stuff, but you don't, if it's 2 weeks out and it hasn't even been mentioned in the company meetings that the birthday month is coming up, when they threw that out there, I just laughed. You know, I was like, oh my God, this is like what, it's the worst. And then when he gets on a plane and flies there, when he was told not to, it was just hilarious. It's like,
Sorry, flies where?
to the Gambia. So he worked his way in to get an invite to go back.
So trying to go around his mom.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm interested in that story.
So essentially, you know, it was like, well, like I said before, they were never going to get back into the Gambia as long as someone was still working there. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't going to change. So he tried to start using his investment in that company to force his way in to take control, which he had given away in the initial contract that he signed. Our contacts in the Gambia thought they could maybe patch things up with the family by allowing him to come, and so they did. Even when we said it's just a PR move, he's only doing it to make it look like SafeMoon is still going to the Gambia. And you'll notice that I think he tweeted from the plane, but never posted again, because everything he tried to do got shut down. And so, talking about the vehicle that went MIA.
Stolen Jeep.
Yeah. That had been donated to the company as part of his investment. And then the company shipped it, not SafeMoon, the other company shipped it to the Gambia.
Sorry, what stolen vehicle for those listening?
It wasn't stolen. He'd purchased it and paid all this money to have it modified and then abandoned it. And so because it was just basically abandoned, he said, go ahead and take it and count it as part of my investment and send it to the Gambia. So our contacts there for Jen's company were using it. And that's when he went down, tried to cut his deal, cut his mom out. They realized that it was never going to be a meeting of the minds. So they were, I think it was the auspices of their driving him to the airport. And he said, stop the car and get out, and put them out on the side of the road, and then drove away in the Jeep. And he had made I think it was a donation in cash to a women's center.
This is crazy.
In the Gambia. And he took the money back because that's what they used to get across the border.
No way. I didn't hear that.
Of course you didn't hear it.
Everything up until that I knew. But
yeah.
He took back a donation.
Yeah.
And that's the money
that's the cash they used.
Border Patrol.
Yeah. To get across out of Senegal, and I guess Morocco would be your.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Nice guy.
That's wild.
That is.
You can't make this up.
That is crazy.
But people think we do.
And that's not even the end of the story.
No.
Then the title was forged in the UK. Who knows where the Jeep is now?
I don't know anything past that, past just what happened with the vehicle. And yep.
Yeah.
That's just wild. But long story short is that he tried to just go around his mom's contacts and influences and go deal directly, cut his mother directly out of the deal. Mm-hmm. They weren't having any of it.
Right.
And then he basically had a bit of a temper tantrum. Like, why did he want to get out so bad? Like,
do what?
Why did he do what he did? That's the question that I'm left with.
With the vehicle?
Yeah.
Oh, because he had flown down on a charter that wasn't going to leave for like 4 more days.
Okay.
And so he didn't want to be there. And so that's why they drove out.
so he illegally bribed his way into
Well,
another country,
alleged.
allegedly. Okay, so I'm just trying to recap what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this is what we heard.
okay.
And then I saw, I think he posted on Instagram before he blocked me, like a picture of them driving across the desert or something.
Okay. Because he didn't want to wait 4 days.
Yeah, it was like I said, there's limited flights into the Gambia, and whatever, he was going to have to wait a couple days or something to get out, and instead he just decided we'll drive out, and maybe I'm sure the people who had been using the Jeep were the ones that refused to cut Jen out, so I think it was also retribution for that too.
Okay.
Yeah, who knows what goes on in that mind? I mean, the thing you have to understand is in the narcissistic mind, they get the kick from offering the gift before they ever give it. Once it's time to give the gift, they've already, the dopamine's worn off. So it's not surprising how many times he was getting a rush by announcing things that were never going to happen. Because it made him sound like, I'm doing this for you. And knowing he would never have to actually do it. That's the only thing I can come up with that explains, how things went.
Makes sense in my mind.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So Dave, in the few minutes we have left.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch on? Stories you have, lessons learned, anything you want to expound on that? Because I know you've been listening to the show and you know more than maybe anyone. Anything you want to clarify or?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot.
We did. Actually, one question we get a lot, and Hayden and I kind of tried to sum it up, but we don't really know all the details. The lawsuit. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of just explain just the basis of it?
Yeah, I mean, because of his stellar business leadership and the fact he was trying to push his way in when he didn't have any contractual basis to do so, they resisted. And being having an unlimited supply of money for lawyers, he just went on he took every angle he could try to take to push them and enforce his will upon his parents. And I mean, there's so many twists and turns that would be a whole nother episode, maybe season 2 if it comes back. But I mean, the amount of stuff that he did is crazy. And when you do the post-mortem and let's go through, he never spent the full $5 million. It was 4.5. That was his investment. He spent $700,000 paying off another party. He spent $400,000 funding a receivership. He spent another $400,000. Our lawyers think he was spending $100,000 a month to fight this suit. Jeez. And when it's all said and done, it's just settled for nothing.
And was this money that was invested, was that safemoon money or was that his own money?
Well,
do you know?
Isn't it fungible? Like
there was no distinction.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Only the shadow knows. Okay. I mean, all I know is it's it's bad business. No matter how you calculate it, it's really bad business.
It's hard to have a line in the sand when you're just using your personal credit card for everything.
Yeah.
Man.
So, be diligent. Actually do your own research. A lot of people say they do, but they don't.
Yeah.
TikTok is not a research. That's all I can say. And if people promise things and they can't even deliver one, be skeptical. Because I didn't know anything about crypto. And you could probably say I still don't, but I do know what it looks like is that the old con game that's been going on since the dawn of man is just moving into different realms. And unfortunately, shitcoins is where they've set up shop.
Yeah.
And if you actually care about DeFi and the future of DeFi,
Yeah.
you would want to fight against that, not
Right.
throw your lot in with the people who are trying to.
Yeah, and it should actually be DeFi, not CeFi. Because when you roll it into I mean, we can go into the rules of crowdfunding, and that's essentially what they did. Like, I remember when crowdfunding first became technically legal, but there were so many rules, and you know, you can't sell a token and suddenly say it's actually part of the company. And that was, you know, the realization when all that came to head.
But we do put out merchandise that says decentralized freedom.
Right. So. Oh man, that office the room next to the conference room was going to be a great merch showroom.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. We had so many plans. Yeah. Anyway, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being on, Dave. Thanks for telling your stories and just for who you are. Hopefully we can have you back on for season 2.
Yeah, if there's questions, maybe other people have, you know, there's a lot here. There's tons. Wait for the series.
And thanks for having me on as a guest co-host. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, for being a part of this journey as well. Hope you've at least enjoyed, learned from, laughed at our stories. Hopefully we'll see you on season 2. So stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll catch you in the next one.